So like,
Pardon me?
sometimes it's more confusing when everything is so nice.
Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I know.
Am I gonna first thing like that?
I can.
Huh?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? If you can you type something in the chat box? Yes, nice. Okay, great. So this is our career development webinar. I'm going to pass it over to Ken now, who's going to be leading the webinar today. If you have any technical issues or questions, just type them into the chat box at any time. Yeah, I'll pass it over to Ken.
All
Great.
right. Thank you, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I actually have an audience, so it's I don't feel like I'm just talking to a computer, which is good. For those of you who don't remember, I was at the orientation, and actually we introduced this concept very briefly, that one of my assignments for this year is going to be working on career development for all of the fellows. And this is kind of our, well, sort of the kickoff, because many of you throughout the state, I'm assuming, have already begun working on 5-year plans for your careers. But what we're going to do today is probably not probably, we're going to actually focus in on things that you can do to be very organized in taking a look down the path to the future, and hopefully come up with some techniques that will allow you to guide that process a little more smoothly, a little more effectively. Okay, well, the next slide is my biography, and or a shortened version of it. But prior to coming to work for CivicSpark 4 years ago, because I got bored with retirement, I spent 35 years in municipal government. So a lot of the things that I talk about today, when I use examples, may relate to municipal government. They should be transferable to just about any career in any, what we used to call white collar professionalism. Very few people wear white collars anymore, so it's getting to be a kind of an antiquated description. So go ahead. Okay. Oh, I forgot one of the other things I was going to say, but I'll say it here, even though we have a slide up. All of you should have received one of these books at orientation, and hopefully you didn't use it to start a fire during the winter someplace, that you actually hung on to it, because this is going to be a book that we will be referring to, that the regional coordinators will be referring to quite a bit in the future. They have a curriculum and a study guide that they will be utilizing to help you navigate through this book. My presentation is going to roughly follow some of the things in the book, but after today, anytime that I speak before you or that we meet individually, we'll be doing a lot in this book. So if you don't know where it is, you probably want to dig through everything and find it. If you don't have one, you probably need to let Mackenzie know. And I don't know what they'll do about that, but it is important for you to have. Okay, how to approach career development. Just real quickly, who here has looked beyond this year with any sort of real serious thought about where you want to be? Oh, it's actually more than I thought. Well, good for you. This is a good group.
Indeed.
Career development, the one thing to really focus on is career development is got to be something that you've got to feel responsible for. You can't look to school counselors or even Mackenzie or anyone who's close to you in your life to help you with this. This is a kind of an internal thing. You're responsible. But there is a but to that. You should seek guidance throughout the process. It's something that you're responsible for, but it's not something that it's going to come easily or naturally to you. So you need to seek guidance. A career development plan is not final the day you initially or eventually believe that it's completed. It will change based upon a wide variety of factors on a regular basis. Goals shift. A year from now, you may find yourself in an entirely different place where all of a sudden something else has become more important to you than what you thought this year was going to be the direction you'd be going in. New challenges, new opportunities present themselves. You've got to be always ready to adjust that ultimate goal and make the appropriate changes to your career development plan. But having the plan will allow you to do that much more effectively than just being out there trying to move forward on your own volition. As a growing professional, you must be willing to consider all these new circumstances in setting a course. Part of being a professional is being someone who is prepared to take on a variety of challenges in your life, whether it's at your job or in developing your career. The further you project into time in goal setting and planning, the more it just becomes a guess, but hopefully an educated guess. And I'm going to take a pause to scroll up. No one can predict the future, and there are a variety of outside influences that will shape your reality. A downturn in the economy, a new technology, a sick family member, these things can impact your goals and your ability to follow through on a planned course of action. Regular review is an essential component of any career development plan. As circumstances change, you must adjust. If it sounds like I'm, overemphasizing this aspect of adjusting, believe me, I'm not. In my 35 years, I imagine that I adjusted my career plan. And since I didn't have the advantage of someone or an organization that cared about my career the way CivicSpark cares about yours, I really didn't sit down at the very beginning when I was your age and start to plan something. I just kind of had a vague idea of what I wanted to do, and I kind of moved in that direction. But it changed several times. And I eventually came to the realization, I shouldn't leave this to chance. I should be doing something that focuses on this, that is proactive and not so reactive. Important thing is to just simply start the process. You're at the perfect time to do it. Once you have a plan, it can be revised, as I've said multiple times in these last few minutes. Even better, as you see a change on the horizon, you can proactively plan for it. So thusly, it isn't something that you just have to react to. You can actually start to see maybe there's a new technology happening and it's going to impact the career that you're in. Well, rather than say, oh, gee, I don't know what I'm going to do about this, I don't know anything about it, you can proactively look into how you can access that new technology and become proficient in it so that it doesn't impact your career. Okay, this is just a list, and people probably aren't seeing me. This is just a list of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about accessing your skills and abilities, the importance of researching potential careers, what to avoid in the process, the actual structure of a plan, gauging your current status, creating a realistic timeline, thinking strategically, and evaluating your total effort. These are all elements that will have a major impact on your plan. Now, I think at this point in time, it's a good time for me to say, I hope people are going to have questions. I want this to be interactive. I want this to be a very relaxed situation. I'm going to be reading some things. I'm going to be talking off the top of my head on others. But please feel free at any point in time, whether you're sitting in the room with me or you're watching this on the webinar, to send in questions or ask questions. I may not stop in the middle of a sentence, but if you want to raise your hand here in the room, and when I get to a point where I plan to take a breath, regardless of the way it may appear now, I actually do stop talking and take breaths. At any rate, I want your questions, because your questions are going to guide us better than what I've prepared. Your questions are going to take us down roads that will be probably much more pertinent than just me sharing with you my thoughts. Okay. Career development, obtaining skills and utilizing ability. Once again, and I know this is going to sound like, I keep saying the same thing over and over, but I think it's so important. The career development plan is always a work in progress. You may be planning to retire in 2 weeks, and it's a work in progress. Because believe me, retirement should be planned for, probably more so than your career. But basically what you're saying is your life is a work in progress. And if you're a professional, your career becomes a major part of your life. If you want to continue moving forward in your career, you must continue growing your skills. Learning is a lifelong process. I'm sure all of you being educated have heard that a multitude of times. And your plan is a career-long tool that you use, obviously. Everyone possesses an aptitude and skill set, both of which are elements in career development. Now, hopefully everyone in this room understands what an aptitude, or everyone around the state, in our program understands the difference between aptitude and skills. Oftentimes, people develop skills along the way because they get something in their mind that this is the career they ought to seek. I know I went to college with several people who when they entered college, thought they were going to be doctors. And they ended up in the communications major. That's obviously that's where I was, because fortunately I knew that something to do with communications was going to be where my career was going to be. And how that happened is either someone in their family had influenced them that they were meant to be a doctor, and in high school they did really well in the sciences. But they got to college and all of a sudden their aptitude was not for science to be a doctor. Their aptitude was to be in some other field. And it was very apparent that they had not really evaluated what their aptitude was. And it went after a skill set, and had a reasonably good skill set in it, but ran up against obstacles. Now, you can change, the challenge is, if necessary, is to change your aptitude. You might be into something that you really care about, and you can change your aptitude, but it's a very long and serious process. You have to, because contrary to popular belief, aptitude is partially acquired and can be developed, but it's not as easy as obtaining a skill set. You really have to work at changing some basic issues of yourself and getting a new discipline in certain areas, because aptitude is a lot about your what you're willing to work at and what you're not that interested in, and you've got to strive to change that interest. That is not something that I highly recommend, but I just don't. If someone is bound and determined to go into a career field and they're struggling based upon this isn't part of what your long-term interests were, it's possible to change it. But I would suggest that you delve deeply into some research on how that is accomplished. I certainly can't tell you how. I've always taken the road of least resistance. Another step in this process is to acquaint yourself with necessary skills and then go out and acquire them. Let's assume you're moving in a direction that your aptitude is in concert with. You need to understand the skills that are necessary to achieve success in any particular field. And these aren't always academic. Yes, should take it. Oh, I thought you were doing that. These aren't always academic pursuits. Sometimes they can be other types of pursuits that will create a new skill set for you. I think on the screen we have 5 strategies that can assist you in developing skills. Find free training programs. Hit the web. Get certified in something. Volunteer in an area that is of interest to you, which all of you are doing this year. I know you're getting a pay stipend, but it's really not commensurate with the work you're doing. So you're in essence a volunteer. And line up a mentor. Now, as a personal example, midway in my career, I had been a community services director. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's parks, recreation, libraries, human services for cities. And I was recruited to an organization called the Lifesavers Foundation to be their executive director. Without going into a lot of detail about that lasted about 1.5 years because the organization merged with another organization and they moved to Minnesota. And I like seeing snow on the mountaintops, but I don't want to live in it. I don't want to shovel it off my driveway. So I chose not to go and went off and did some other things. Well, wanted to get back into municipal government, heard that the city that I'd worked for quite a while in Southern California wanted to get into a stronger economic development program. I had an interest in that. And so I decided that I was going to become their first economic development director, even though I didn't think they were ready yet to hire someone. What did I do? Well, I didn't hit the web because we didn't have the web. But I went and started learning everything I could about economics. I had taken economics in college, but it was something that I had to take, and I think I took one elective that sounded interesting. So I started studying economics at the library. The library is something that we used to use instead of the internet. Took a class at Cal State, or took a certification program at Cal State San Bernardino at night, and became certified as an economic development something or other. I have the certificate somewhere, but I'm not sure what they certified me as. I had a very good friend who was city manager in the city of Brea in Southern California, and they were doing a lot of really innovative and interesting economic development things. So I went down to him and said, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to get involved in your program, sit in on meetings, do whatever I can to help you. And he was happy to have me do that. And then I also asked him if he would take some time to work with me as my mentor. Even though he and I had been peers for many years, I knew he knew a lot more about it than I did. After going through all of that and making sure that the people in this city that I wanted to work in knew that I was doing this, they eventually called me and said, hey, we've considered everything you've been talking to us about, and we'd like you to come to work. So I changed my career I was in my 40s, and I turned around from having been working in community services to being in economic development. And it was a great change. And so once again, these 5 steps are very, very important or strategies that you can use. Okay, some typical skills for career development are up on the board, right? Yeah. And I think they're fairly self-explanatory. And I'm certain that many of you are already utilizing these skills in your jobs today. But refining them is the difference between being a staff person and moving up the professional ladder. I mean, I can't say enough about being able to have, or let me rephrase this. I can't say enough about having analytical skills. Being able to interpret relevant material and make it make it relevant to where you're working. I probably should have phrased that, taking research material and making it relevant to the job you're doing. Constantly being able to reason and deal with inconsistencies in possibly the reason that is being put forward by other staff people. And then, of course, most important is analyzing data. If you have those 3 skills, your ability to move forward in your career is going to be greatly enhanced. Written communication, I'm assuming everyone here has a strong background in written communication, but most professional jobs require you to be able to communicate effectively with the written word, be able to construct logical positions, use language with precision, not overstate things. Verbal communication. Here's something I'm going to suggest that you do as I say and not as I do. You're right. I needed a drum roll there. Expressing yourself clearly and confidently is very, very important. And thinking on your feet. You can't, it's something that you must always strive to achieve. Research skills, interpreting statistics, planning and organizing, managing your workloads, meeting deadlines. These are things that you're learning about now, but these are things that you need to always continue to enhance. And then here's one that is not often enough, I think, discussed. Teamwork, group dynamics, probably one of the most important things that you can achieve in your growth as a professional and extending your career. Having good communication within a group, demonstrating leadership. One of the things that I'm a big proponent in this program is the leadership aspect of the program, because it gives you an opportunity to both be a leader and also to be a conduit for leadership, meaning a follower. Both are equally important in the leadership role. Just a little piece of research that I ran across here is that people who have played team sports or been a member of a drama group or some other collective activity make 20% higher wages and have 21% less incidence of unemployment. The ability to, back when you were in kindergarten, and they still have kindergarten, okay. And you didn't get grades, but the teacher would write things like on your progress report, like plays well with others. Those people who got plays well with others and continued to grow those skills are in the group that we're talking about. If you got in kindergarten, doesn't want to play with others, won't share, things like that, well then this is something you need to work on, because it really has an impact on your career. Believe me, I used to ask this question in interviews of people, what types of group activities had they participated in? And almost without exception, those that had lots of group activity experience worked out better in an organization where working together was important. Now, there's some careers where that's not that important, but in most careers it is. So it's something that I really talk a lot about in terms of developing a professional skills. Okay, research and develop a career path. A career development plan is an organized approach to learning experiences that are designed to improve competencies and skills you need to be successful in achieving your professional path. Anybody got any idea what that means? Oh, come on, somebody's got to know what that means.
Make a plan.
Make a plan. Well, that's let's start. But make a plan that does what? Yes.
It can outline 3 different steps of paths you can take to different careers. So if there's like a training you want to do, maybe mapping out when that training is, how you sign up for it, certificate that you want to get, what are the steps to get it, and then how that will help you in whatever your career goal is down the line.
That's 90% of it. Anybody know what the 10% is? Okay, the 10% is it keeps you focused. It keeps you focused, and it gives you something to look back on and say, oh, I wish I had done that better, so next time, the next job or the next career step, I'm going to try to improve. That's what this is all about. And utilizing self-reflection and career exploration helps you identify the career path that will bring you the most job satisfaction. Once you've identified your career interest, you'll be able to categorize the related knowledge, which is, we just heard this, skills and competencies you need in order to reach your career goal. The career development plan helps you structure your learning and action activities in an intentional way around the identified knowledge, skills, and competencies. There are 3 simple elements that must be included. You need to pay attention to your natural characteristics. And sometimes those characteristics are strengths and sometimes they're weaknesses. And the obvious thing is that when they're strengths, you need to enhance them. When they're weaknesses, you need to try to control that element of your personality. Gaining new skills will always enhance your job performance, but it'll also enhance your ability to move forward. In fact, something I've always shared with employees of mine is that you want to look, act, and be able to do the job that's right in front of you if you want to advance. Now, some people get to a point in their career where they go, hey, I'm happy here. The money's fine. I love what I'm doing. I don't want to move up. But most people, I think, do have the desire to move forward in most organizations because that gives you the ability to do more and have more success. And especially in a field like what all of you are in, the world is depending upon your generation to to change the direction we're going in now. And the only way you're going to affect change is by moving up in that organization or in that field. And so the way you do that is have skill, you develop new skills, and you take those skills and continue to apply them so that they become stronger and better, so and that gets recognized so that you have the opportunity to move forward.
Sorry to interrupt. Could
Yes.
you just, I think the people in the back can't see the bottom of the slides. Just if you could, you don't have to move that much, but just a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't know if people were there.
Yes. Now I completely lost where I was. No.
Sorry.
Areas. Well, once again, taking your characteristics, enhancing them, working on those parts of those characteristics that aren't that strong, getting new skills, always trying to have the skills of the job that just precedes you, or not precedes you. Well, I don't know what would be the right word there. The job that you're striving for, I guess. And always recording this and taking note of it to stay focused. That's the three major elements of doing the research and development of a career path. Enhancing, acquiring new skills, and focusing on and recording that so that you can move forward in a planned manner. Okay, there's something. Oh, I see what they did there. Somewhat, I have to explain. I put down my notes on this and asked somebody at LGC to put this into a PowerPoint because I'm technologically challenged, and some of the things they moved around because I think they thought it made more sense, and they were right. And so sometimes I get lost in my own notes, so you'll have to bear with me.
Do you want me to jump ahead and then I can jump back?
No, I'm fine. I figured out where I am. I just was not. I was further along than I thought. The things that I just talked about constitute the purpose of creating a plan for your career development. Some additional considerations, which I think are on the board. Yes. What I talked about before was mainly what you need to do yourself to make yourself a better candidate to move forward. These things that I will move aside here, and so everyone can see: change in technology, new opportunities, future staffing needs in a particular field, leadership development, relationship building, are all things that are going to be opportunities or challenges that will present themselves and that you need to be ready to respond to. The change in technology is obvious, and it's something that you all learned to live. You spent your entire lives knowing technology changes every 6 months. And most of you probably are fairly comfortable with that. So that was probably a greater challenge in the past than it is now, since most of you have grown up with technology and its rapid changes. New opportunities is something that happens all the time, and it's been happening and will always have an impact on your ability to move forward, and it's a positive thing. Staffing needs. Now, this is going to be a real interesting challenge for your generation because technology, while it's a great tool and that we all use and can provide many, many opportunities, and we have one of our greatest industries in the world today didn't really exist 25 years ago. And that's obviously the technology industry. I mean, it was there, but it was a really, really small part of what was happening. And now it's one of the major elements. But what's going to be challenging for your generation is, and maybe not so much for those of you in this room or watching this around the state, but where there's going to be a huge challenge is in the fact that a lot of jobs that are now being done by people are going to be done by machines or by technology. I just went into a supermarket the other day and I saw that they now have the self-checkouts. Well, being an old person who wants to see a middle class thrive, I refuse to use those things. I'm going to go to, even if I have to stand in line and wait for a while, because I want that person who's checking out the groceries to continue to have a good union job. But that's going to have a major impact on the middle class and the working class. Leadership development, once again, is my thing. Leaders are successful. Everyone else, administrators and technicians are necessary, but they're never successful. They're only doing work that others have. Whoops.
Sorry. It'll come back.
Oh, okay. Did they all lose that?
No, everybody else is good. It's just us.
Leaders will always be in demand because they are able to make things happen. So if you want your career to move forward and be fruitful, leadership is one of the most important elements. And relationship building. That one I really find as an interesting challenge for the future. And I'm just not sure how, with people working from home, with people telecommunicating and things of that nature, that ability to build relationships, which I see to be so important to career development, I think is going to be somewhat limited. Or at least it's going to change. And maybe you can do the same things over the computer that we all used to do face to face. That one I'm going to have to leave to all of you to decide. Okay. I'm finding it's almost easier for me to just do it off of here.
I think the people on the webinar won't be able to see you very well if you're over there.
I think they see me. I guess we could ask everyone that's on. Can they hear me?
Yeah. Yes, they can hear you.
Okay.
No one's
I'm just going to
complained.
do this for this one. The career development plan should include competencies and skills you wish to develop, learning activities that can help you develop identified skills, the learning resources and time frame and success indicators. This is kind of, if you drop that into each one of these concepts and phrases, you basically have your plan. You identify the competencies and skills that first it should say the competencies and skills you possess, and then the ones you wish to develop. That was my mistake. Learning activities that can help you develop these identified skills, learning resources, the time frame, and success indicators. There's your plan right there. There's the outline of your plan. You take those points and start filling in all of that, you've got a plan. Although, in another commercial, I will get the AmeriCorps. Well, this is the sponsor that's bringing you this program today, so we have to get our. AmeriCorps is bringing you this program today because they pay my salary and they're paying yours to some degree. Any rate, this book is what you. There are templates in this book that will assist you in putting this together. But if you don't like prefab templates, you've got it right there. And here's, once again, and I've made this point several times, and you're going to get sick and tired of hearing me make it, but this is not like an assignment to do a career development plan. And you say, got it done, you turn it in, get a grade, and then you say, that's over with, move on to the next. This is this is a dynamic document. This is a living document. You've got to be working with it all the time, and reflecting on it all the time. Now, let's move on.
I have a question.
Okay, great. All right, first question.
So to know what skills you need for the job you want,
Yes.
you need to know somebody who has that job, right?
Or you need to do the research.
Right. But focusing on the person,
Yeah.
how would you recommend getting good mentors for the jobs
Oh.
that you want?
We're going to talk about that.
Later.
Hey.
Yes, we are going to talk about that.
I'll wait.
But once again, and a commercial for our other sponsor today, the LGC, you work for an organization that is unlike just about any other organization I've ever been involved with, where they are very, very attuned to the fact that they want people, especially in this program, to grow and have a successful career and do great things to move the issues that we're all involved in along. So that's why I'm doing this, and I'm going to be available to all of you for the rest of the year, either on one-on-one over the phone or if at mid-year gathering, and I may be doing some other presentations. We're going to be talking about helping you develop your career all the way along. So we're going to be talking. So actually, you folks have Mackenzie as a mentor, and you have here in the room, and each of you out around the state have your regional coordinator as a mentor. I've never worked in an organization where they told the supervisor of a group of people, one of your jobs is to be a good mentor. That's a very unusual thing. And and I know Mackenzie and Bree and Chris and Lexi and Anna. Did I miss anybody?
No.
Are all fantastic mentors.
Yep.
So no, and I say that with I said that a little facetiously, but I meant it seriously. As we go through these next hour or so, you'll see that I have a difficult time determining the difference between making statement of facts and trying to make fun of stuff. So just bear with me. But no, I say that with all sincerity. The 5 people that are assigned to mentor are all excellent, and I believe that they will do a fantastic job. But on top of that, I'm here, and I'm just an email or phone call away. And we'll talk more about that, though. Now, where are we?
What to avoid? Did we skip one though?
No.
No. Okay. What to avoid?
Okay. I just haven't been moving along. I've been talking off my head, top of my head. What to avoid? It's important to identify what to avoid, obviously. Every goal that you set is going to have a set of issues and challenges, which is like everything else in life. And setting a goal and taking a blind eye to issues and challenges is not something I recommend. You need to, each time you set a goal, take a look at what the challenges are going to be to achieving that goal. Identifying each and setting out to address them will be an important effort in this endeavor. Make a list of potentially problematic circumstances that could prevent you from realizing the goals that constitute your career path. Bless you. Examples are personal issues, economic matters, academic field with limited number of jobs. There's the list could go on forever. But each time you set a goal, make sure that you're not just, thinking that everything's going to be wonderful because you set this goal and you know what you want to be. There's going to be challenges, so you need to avoid it. And basically, that's what you need to avoid. I mean, it's knowing the truth about where you're headed and what you plan on doing, and then what some of the things that are going to be that are going to create obstacles for you. Okay, here we go. Actually creating a career development plan. Well, in the section before last, I talked about, I pointed out in that paragraph were the elements that you needed to focus on, and you could break them down. But you also need to have a really good understanding of what it is that you're interested in and what you think is going to capture your attention and your diligence and your dedication. And so what a simple way to start this is to write down some, and as it says up there, some very simple, maybe even vague, narrow concepts of what your interests are. Now, this is assuming that you have not already have a hard and fast desire to do something. This is assuming that you're going, oh, I'm kind of interested in this, but I'm not sure, and I'm kind of interested in that. Write them down. Make them, they could be very vague and very narrow. You might not know much about them. If you had to define your career by a few terms, how would you define it? For example, and once again, as I told you early on, I have to use the public sector because that's where I've been. For example, let's say after working in local government, you decide this is the place for me. I love local government. And after some very serious sessions with a psychiatrist, and if you still feel that way, what I would suggest you do in this area is I'm sorry, I'm making myself laugh now. It will require define what you believe it will require to enter that field and write it down. Now that comes to your question is like, all right, why? I don't know what it's going to take. This is the point where you first seek out someone to talk to about being in local government. And if in fact that was the choice of any of you, most of you are working in a local government setting, so you obviously have a wide variety of people that you could chat with about their career. And most people are really happy to talk about themselves. In fact, it's generally everyone's favorite subject. And so I'm sure they'll be happy to tell you what it took for them to get where they are and what it takes. And take notes, obviously, from that. And from there, you sit down to how that fits your interests and how you could define that information into seeing yourself in that role. Some of the things that you want to look for in these informal interviews are what skills they brought, what education they had, what interests they had in this job. Now, some are going to just say, "Hey, it's the first job I applied for that somebody hired me." But then they may say, "Gee, once I got into it, I found I really enjoyed it." That's what happened to me. I thought I was headed to being a public relations advertising person, but because of being always involved in sports, during college, I worked for parks and recreation departments. And what ended up happening is they just kept promoting me. When I got out of college, I said, well, here, this is not quite a full-time job, but you want to do this? And I said, yeah, I'll do that for a while. And then something else came along and they said, well, gee, we have this opportunity. You want this job? Before I knew it, I was in a field, but what I realized, hey, this really fits me better than what I thought I wanted to do, and completely changed my career development plan. So, as the board says, and they even did a neat little chart. Step 1, write down your career interests. Step 2, identify all long-term professional goals. Step 3, identify the short-term goals that will contribute to long-term interests. Step 4, list 2 to 3 activities that will help you reach each goal. So this is a nice little template to first just kind of consider, and as I said, just in a vague and simple way, what your career interests are. From that, you identify where you want to be. So if you're local government, you want to work for a city, and for most people that would mean they wanted to become a department director or maybe even the city manager. Step 3, identify short-term goals that will contribute to your long-term interest. This is probably the most important thing up here. If you just have long-term goals that are going to take a while to reach, you're going to get discouraged along the way. So you want to do this step by step. And so if you want to be the city manager, a city manager somewhere in the city, or the head of whatever, if that's what you aspire to, you want to start identifying what are the steps to get there. What's the educational step? What are the educational steps? What are the job promotion steps to getting there? What organizations do I need to belong to be able to achieve this? What kinds of experiences do I need to have to be able to achieve this? And then step 4 is what we're talking about right now. List those activities that will help you reach it. And then you've got it down and you just keep checking them off. And you have these little steps. So you get to I actually, when I first saw that, I thought it was different colored laptops.
They do look like
That's what I thought. Okay, how many of you heard of SMART goals? Okay, so I don't need to go into it, and I'm assuming the same number of people out in the state.
Probably.
So I'm going to assume that's the same average number. SMART means well, I'm looking at this. It's, for some reason, I've got them out of order here, but specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Why I got them out of order here, I don't know. So, hey.
They're over there.
No, but I'm talking about all my
Yeah, you have
notes.
arson tea,
On my notes.
which isn't as good of an acronym.
Pardon me?
The order you have is arson tea, which just isn't. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Okay, that's all right. I'll remember. Is the goal specific? In general, a non-specific goal could lead down many dead ends. In other words, if you're not focused and understand exactly what it is that you want to achieve, you may end up taking, as it says, dead ends. You may end up places that you didn't mean to get to. Is it measurable? How will you know if you've accomplished it? Going into anything, you absolutely need to know that something can be measured along the way. That it isn't just something. Well, I want to get there, but I'm not sure how to, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to determine along the way if I'm making any progress. Is like, it's like on oh God, senior moment. A treadmill. You're moving, but you're not going anywhere. Is it attainable? Which is almost the same thing. Is it measurable? Because obviously only those things you can attain can you measure. But making sure that, and I guess they needed to put this in because otherwise it would be SMRT and that wouldn't spell anything. So, but writing down the goal helps you see ways in which you can attain it and recognize opportunities that bring you closer to reaching your goal. Is it realistic? And here's something that's the most important thing about setting goals in any way whatsoever. Number one, is it doable? Can it actually be accomplished? Is it not? You're not building, hopefully you're not building castles in the clouds, that you have something that's doable. And then maybe even more importantly, is it supportable? Now this applies, you can use this in your day-to-day work, actually. Your work, most that are working in local governments, everything that comes out of any sort of an organization has to be supported by not just that organization, but those who support that organization. So is what you're doing falling within, and in this case, we're looking at it as an activity of your own doing. Can you actually support this? Can you support it financially? Can you support it intellectually? Can you support it emotionally? These are all really important issues to consider. That you look at this track and you go, is it supportable? Can I support it myself? Or can those around me? If you're in significant relationships, if you have people who depend upon you, can they be supportive of where you want to go? Really an important aspect of setting any kind of goal in any way. And is it timely? Every goal needs to be time bound. If you leave a goal open-ended without a time, you'll never get there. You've got to have a reasonable time set, realizing there are going to be some reasons why it may get delayed, but it should be something that you're going to be able to achieve. And also, if you don't have a time limit, sometimes it doesn't become very urgent for you to accomplish it. And to me, that's probably the most important element of all, that you set a goal, it should be something you really want to achieve, and you give it the highest priority. Okay. Once again, back to, you need a template. Now, for those of you that like to just do your own thing,
Sorry.
which is just about to come back,
There it is.
do your own thing. I gave you in that paragraph, I gave you the elements that your template needs to have. But if you don't like the templates in the book, you can go to the web, and there's tons of templates for this, but have something that organizes you. Decide on strategies and activities to help you accomplish your goals. I think we've pretty much talked about those, but let's just get back, because this is getting back to our question here. One of the strategies and activities is to find a coach. Find someone who is going to help you along the lines. Once again, while you're here with CivicSpark, you've got coaches. You've got people who are willing to help you and talk to you about it. Do lots of professional reading. Back to my example of where I said, gee, I want to get back into municipal government. Not really too excited about getting back into community services. Already had a few jobs in that area. I had two major jobs in that area. Wanted to find something new. Did a lot of professional reading on economic development. Saw that was a perfect fit for my aptitude, and I just needed to improve my skills. So professional reading was where I did a whole lot of that, or I gained a whole lot of that, I should say. Keep a log or a journal of your activities. Once again, reflection. How much did that help me? Did I do the right thing? That way you don't end up repeating mistakes.
Mhm.
If you've got a record of it and you're making a note, this was really a dead end, and you're not going to repeat that if you've made that as a conscious effort to note that. Get involved in a professional organization. Yes.
I just was wondering, when you're talking about professional reading, are you talking about like publications from professional organizations?
I'm sorry, speak up a little bit.
When you're talking about professional reading, are you talking about publications from organizations, or could you just expand on like the types of
Just
things?
knowledge about the field or about what you want to accomplish. Yes to your question. That's one. But there's just, when I was, deciding that I wanted to get into the field of economic development because I saw an opportunity, I read everything I could on it. I read books on economics, just real general books on economics, especially local economics. I joined an organization that I can't think of the name of. It was the part of the U.S. Mayor's Conference on economic development and something else. So I joined that, and I got all their professional works. I read the files from the city of Brea about their economic development efforts and what had been successful and what hadn't been. I just absorbed as much as I can, or I could at the time. And started reading the business section of the newspaper thoroughly. Even things that didn't seem like it interested me, if it had anything whatsoever to do with local economics, I read about it. So to answer your question, is you just read as much as you can. I guess I use the word professional to just mean not leisure reading, not fiction. But even that, if there was a fictional book about what you wanted to do, it might be something that would help a great deal. Okay, get involved with professional organizations. Really important. And we're going to talk about networking here in a minute. But getting involved with professional organizations is probably one of the most important things you can do. Now, I'm not a real joiner. So when I join something, it's kind of like, I have to take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm going to belong to this. But you got to do it. It was very helpful to me in every step of my career, belonging to a professional organization and getting involved in what they were doing. And finally, learn a new technology. Once again, that's something that's going to come very easy to everyone listening. For me, it's always been a big struggle. When I went back into economic development, and I realized I was called the director, but I was the only employee. I had to do everything. I mean, I could get someone. I had never typed my own letter as a director ever. I would write something out longhand and give it to a secretary. Well, all of a sudden I'm back in, and I realized they're not giving me a secretary. So I had to learn how to use a computer for the first time in my life. And I had to learn how to type, although I still only type like this. But now I don't trust somebody else to type my stuff. I wouldn't have anybody else type my stuff. But so I learned a new technology. I don't know what that new technology might be for any of you, but that's something that is going to be a necessary part of this process. Create a portfolio of your accomplishments. Now, in my day, that meant you had this big file type thing that you had things in that showed off, different works that you've done. For me, it was a lot of things that I'd done to promote programs and things of that nature. One of the reasons why I'm a big advocate of the newsletter, or I guess your group is also going to do a blog.
Podcast.
Podcasts. Okay. blog, podcast. Is there a difference?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know. That is something that you can carry with you wherever you go, that you were part of this. You were part of putting out this newsletter. You're a part of doing whatever you do to put a podcast together. And I'm assuming it's something that can be recorded and kept. And yes. One of the things that when I was doing Mackenzie's job, we did a year-end report. And the first 2 years that I was doing, we actually printed that report. So it was something we could hand people. They blew everybody away. None of the other regions were doing year-end reports. But that's something that everybody who participated in that year-end report, which was the whole group, Mackenzie happened to be the leader of that, but everybody participated. They had that. They could put that in their portfolio. But now, then I guess the last couple of years, last year, it was done just on the internet. Nothing was printed.
We have some printed ones, but yeah, they're doing it this year as well.
Yeah, and that's something that all of you who participate in can keep. And I guarantee you go into an organization and you say, well, and they ask, and at the end of the interview, what things would you like to add? Well, I have my portfolio here and some things I'd like to point out to you. I was very much involved in doing the year-end report. Eyes are going to open up, because that's something that is part of almost every organization around. They do year-end reports, and knowing that they're getting somebody in that has already worked on something like that and can show it, and it's a professional, well done, well thought out report, that's going to be ding, ding, ding. That's something of immense value. Okay, slide 11. Evaluate your plan. Mackenzie will be able to tell you that the word she probably heard most from me in the year that I was the regional coordinator was we have to evaluate that. We have a work plan so that we can utilize that information to evaluate what we're doing. Another big thing in organizations, you don't want to, everything needs to be well evaluated so that next time you do it, you're not going to make the same mistakes. You're going to learn from what you did. You're going to grow. But evaluating your plan, in other words, some of the elements of it are, do your goals and your plan reflect your needs? Really an important part. In fact, I'm surprised I hadn't brought that up earlier in this outline. You start down a career path that doesn't meet your personal needs or professional needs. I mean, that's a career destined for failure. You need to make sure that your goals and your plan reflect what your needs are. Does your plan involve new learning and growth, not just time and effort? A lot of people see themselves in implementing any sort of plan that the most important part of it is the time and effort they put into it. But I think just about anything that you do, whether it's a professional assignment or doing your career development plan, needs to include learning and growth. Are your goals clear? I mean, obviously, you need to understand, your goals need to be readily understood. Excuse me. Does your plan include time for reflection followed by appropriate adjustments? You know, the concept of change is something I can't emphasize enough. You got to remember, as many philosophers have said, life is what happens to you while you're making plans. Your life goes on regardless of what your plans are. And things are going to happen in your life that are going to not coincide with your plan. That's why reflection and making adjustments to your plan is going to be something that you're going to constantly want to be doing. And the only way you can make appropriate adjustments is to do appropriate reflection. You've got to sit down and think about it. You can't. Once again, earlier I said you want to be proactive, not reactive. Something happens in your life, you don't want to just say, okay, that's going to change my career development just because of the incident happened or the circumstances happened. What you really need to do is reflect on what does that really mean? What do these changes really mean to me and where I'm going and where I want to be? You know, I can't emphasize reflection enough. One of the things that I used to do in managing organizations is I made sure I created every job so that the regular day-to-day work only took up about 80% of their time, because I wanted every employee who was in a management or supervisory level to have about 20% of their time to reflect on what's going on and to think ahead and to evaluate what's going on. Now, that's a luxury that very few organizations have, and I used to have to fight for it like crazy because it meant I had to staff at a certain level. But I guarantee it never failed me. Okay, next. Now we've done all the preliminary work, and hopefully I didn't bounce around too much. And obviously we can, if any of you feel like maybe I've confused you more than helped you, I'm available to sit down and talk you through it. But a lot of information that I needed to squeeze into a certain amount of time. Now, this next area is something I'm sure none of you are familiar with, doing a gap analysis. Anybody ever heard of doing that?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would be the best joke of the day.
I thought it was funny.
To establish where you are in your career, write down exactly where you fall in that career ladder right now. In other words, you have taken a major step in your career by taking this job. Some of you may have already done other things, like already achieved a master's degree or have already worked in a field somewhere and you decided, oh, I want to go do this for a year and see if this is where I need to be, which would be a great thing to do in a career development plan. But what you need to do is see this as a timeline, and here's where I started. I enrolled in college, and here is where I am, and here is where I want to be. And that'll give you a really clear picture, because then what you need to do is obviously say, okay, I've accomplished this much, but here's what I still need to accomplish. And that's a really important thing. Now let's see if I wrote down anything that was better than what I just said. Things like, have I finished necessary education? What do I need to do next to get skills that are necessary? Maybe there's more education that you're planning to seek. Are you even working in the field right now? Are you working in the field that you want to eventually end up in, or was this a lark? And which, it could be. I have always been interested in climate. I want to get into it. Actually, I took the job, not the one I'm in now, but as a regional coordinator when they were using retired people to do it in part-time roles, because I said, I know nothing about science other than what I see on the Science Channel. And I don't know anything about climate other than I know that I believe there's something going on, and that man undoubtedly caused it, because most things in my life that's been screwed up, man has caused it. Humans have caused it, excuse me.
We could say. No, I'm just kidding.
Humans have caused it. So, but my point being, this, you need to say, okay, where am I? Where do I need to move next? You need to really understand where you are. You need to do a gap analysis. That will be a very important step. You need to do a timeline. Next slide.
Oh, my bad.
No, I jumped pretty quickly there. You need to do a career development timeline. And we talked about that just with the gap analysis. And the timeline needs to start with your short-term goals from where you are now, obviously, with a clear sight set on the long-term goals, which are down toward the end of the timeline, obviously. The timeline needs to be disciplined and flexible at the same time. And actually, if I was just giving you advice on becoming really good professionals, I would say the same thing. You have to be disciplined all the time, but you got to be flexible. You got to realize that change is the only thing that you can count on, and you've got to be ready to proactively deal with change. It's important that as unforeseen opportunities and obstacles occur, you adjust to both your short and long-term goals accordingly, and have the and allocate the appropriate amount of time necessary to achieve them. Really important. You don't want to try to rush yourself. You want to make sure that you give yourself time to really achieve goals. Now, sometimes something will happen. You might be working somewhere and all of a sudden somebody says, I'm promoting you out of the blue. I need somebody in this role, and I think you're the great person. And that may be something where you say, gee, I'm not going to make that jump for another 2 years. And all of a sudden you find yourself moving into that role. You've got to be ready to sit down and say, okay, and then assuming you accept it, you think that you're ready to do it, you want to do it. Okay, that's changed everything. Now I've got to rethink everything. And that was, when that happened to me, that's where I really realized I needed some sort of a plan. Up until then, I'd just been saying, now here's where I want to go, and here's, I'm just going to do these things as they occur. Well, then that's when I realized I need a plan. And from then on, I never did anything career-wise without having some sort of a plan. Okay. Why is it just Initially, the timeline needs to reflect all of the goals you hope to achieve. Obviously, as you start achieving them, they fall off. Achievement should be measured and adjusted in increments of 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. The reason for this is that gives you that, as I said before, that gives you that time to achieve what you need to achieve to get to the next position. What you'll find as you move forward in a career, that it'll become fewer and fewer 2-year jumps and more 5 and 10-year jumps. And toward the end, you're pretty much just riding out the last 10 years, which you don't need to worry about for a while. As time proceeds, you will be adding or changing your goals and their order, include setbacks as a means to measure and a means to achieve them. In other words, you're going to learn more from your setbacks than you're going to learn from your achievements. Oftentimes, achievements come and you might even, it may come as a surprise to you. You've been doing a really good job and you're going to move forward. Something you've been given, you're part of a team working on something, and the person who's ultimately in charge says, I want you to lead this sub-team. You may not even have been expecting that or anything. You're not really going to know, other than that you were doing a good job and obviously it was recognized. But you're really not going to know the things that went on in this person's mind that moved you forward. But if you have a setback, it's going to be pretty obvious what the setback was, and you're going to really learn from that. You'll learn more from setback. Well, I just said that. Okay. We're not recording this, are we? I mean, somebody's not going to show this to me sometime and say, see what you did. Make note of milestones. You should always mark milestones in your career path. These are important skills, certificates, awards, promotions, and so on that project your career path. That you can actually use those milestones to note where you're moving and how you're getting there. But more importantly, many of that is it really is a great motivating factor. So make sure you're making note of those milestones. Most important to keep the plan dynamic. And we've already talked about this. It's not set in stone. Keep in mind your goals will most likely change over time. You will need to adjust your plan due to unforeseen circumstances. You also may need to change what you want with time or realize the means to achieving a particular goal are different than you anticipated. In other words, just make sure that you are ready and willing and able to make necessary changes as they occur. Okay. Does anybody need to can we take a break?
Well, sure.
Because I'm, what time?
Well, it's 11:21, and we look like
Well,
we're like
let's
three
just push forward.
Okay.
I didn't realize that we'd gotten that far down.
People seem to have been like getting up.
Yeah.
You can get up if you need.
Well, maybe I'm. Can I just get up? I'll just turn this over to you. And, okay.
The notes.
Have any of you had any exposure to any of the concepts around strategic thinking?
Oh, we're on the next.
Oh, did I miss one?
I don't know. Did you talk about? Yeah, you talked about the
Yeah.
plan dynamics.
You know, I think it's appropriate for me to tell the line that you told me not to tell at the beginning. I wanted to open with today saying that we did not rehearse this at all, and that hopefully that wouldn't be too noticeable as we went through it. But obviously, that would. And Mackenzie said, "Oh," because I thought that was kind of funny, and Mackenzie goes, "No, it's going to set the wrong tone. Don't do it." So I didn't do it. But I think
No, we've
Sounds
said it anyway.
I think we have. Mackenzie wanted me to take the polish off of my presentation, and I think I've exceeded her expectations tremendously.
You're doing great, Ken.
Okay. How many of you? I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. How many of you have had any exposure to strategic thinking and any of the concepts that go along with that? Okay, it's probably almost the same people who raised their hands last time. Either this is the group that's not shy, or the rest of you need to catch up. No, I'm sorry.
Oh man.
I get silly after a while. I'm sorry. Okay, strategic thinking is really kind of a simple concept. The reason I ask that question is sometimes people can make this seem like this is a really heavy duty concept, and that needs lots of different elements to effectively implement and all of that. And basically, it's these things that are on the board behind me here. How to get started, evaluate your plan. If it's a reoccurring plan, that's where you go back and look at all the things that happened the year before, and now you're evaluating. You do your research, which we've talked about. Connect the dots. There's going to be lots of different elements that may seem unrelated that you're going to encounter in any sort of activity, whether it be your career development or project at work. What you need to really work on, and this is where we get to this reflecting, is connecting the dots, finding those connections to things, because I can almost just guarantee you that if it's something that has come up in your career search or in your job, and there's going to be a relationship there somewhere, and it's just going to take reflection to be able to connect those dots, and that's going to make everything have such clarity, or have a more clarity than before. And then take time to reflect. As I told you, I'm big on that you have to have time to think about what you're doing, to make determinations. You want to be proactive. Being reflective is another way to say being proactive. You can't be proactive without being reflective. And if you don't reflect, you're being reactive. And that's the worst thing in the world you can do. In your personal relationships is probably the best and easiest example. Something happens in a personal relationship that you have. What's the best thing to do that upsets you? What's the best thing to do? React, start screaming, getting out of control, or stepping back and reflecting and thinking about it. You know, this could be with a sibling, it could be with a significant other, it can be just with a group of friends. It's like taking some time to think about what occurred, how it really impacts the situation, and what's the best response. Well, that's true through everything in life, and especially with your career development. Devise your strategy for execution. Once again, this is just simply don't jump into things. Think about it. Sit and plan what you think the best course of action is. It may not be your first draft may not be the best way to go. You may have to make changes along the way. Allocate resources. Something that no matter what, whether it's the job or it's it's your career plan, you're going to have a certain number of resources to put into it, whether that's your time, whether that's funding to take a class or whatever. You're going to have to allocate those resources because I would assume we don't have any of Trump's kids in here, do we? You never know. They're popping up everywhere. But at any rate, unless you fall into that group of people that have unlimited resources, we all have to plan to allocate our resources here. And here, most importantly, build your, of course all of these are important, so I probably said most importantly on half of it. Build your professional reputation. Most people today do not start with an organization and stay with it for a long period of time, for their whole lives. That's kind of a lost concept. So the most important thing about being able to move from one organization to another is what is your reputation in the field, and that you've cultivated it and thought about it. Okay, just looking to see if I had any pearls of wisdom that I could say. Allocating resources. Really, another important point is prioritize those resources. If you've got a finite amount of resources, you're going to need to take a look at all of those things that those resources can go to, and then prioritize them to, obviously, in any priority from what's most important to what's least important, and allocate your resources accordingly. Networking is probably, that last point, networking is the thing that's probably going to be most important in your career. 65 to 80% of all professional jobs are found through networking. 65 to 80%. I don't care what the commercials say about all these wonderful websites that you can get on that will circulate your resume and get you all these great jobs. I'm sure that works to a certain degree, but what's most important is when somebody's going through applications, say, "Oh, I've heard of her. Wow, I heard she does some really good stuff for that CivicSpark organization. She's going to get an interview for her." And the way you get that is through networking. Is through belonging to organizations. If there's an opportunity to sit on some sort of committee, even if that's not your thing, do it. And then something I always say to people is one of the most important things that you can do in your career is be really good at what you do and take credit for it. Do not be shy about letting people know that you're good at your job or good at what you do. That's why the newsletter is such an important thing for you to have, because there's a chance for you to shine, for you to tell all the great work you're doing. people, there's nothing wrong with pushing aside humility if it's something you can actually achieve. Obviously, you don't want to brag about things that you weren't from your work, that didn't occur because of your involvement. There used to be a joke about being a classically trained manager meant you took credit for everything that your people did. It obviously loses context a little bit, but you don't ever want to take credit for anything that you weren't directly responsible for. But if you were responsible for it, you want people to know that you were responsible. Obviously, you have to do it with as much humility as possible, but still, you need to have that information out there. Networking can be both a planned effort, and here I say it must be planned, but it can be unplanned, but it's going to be far more effective if it's planned. And you need to make it an ongoing part of your career development plan. What you're doing, and actually this is networking right here, what you're all doing. You're all working for the same organization. You're getting together monthly.
Mm-hmm.
You get together monthly for training and for meetings. This is networking. There's going to be moments when you all came in, you were talking, I'm doing this, you're doing that sort of thing. This is networking. Some of the best kind of networking with your peers. But you're creating a community who encourages each other, provides emotional support, and information and motivation. That's the keys to networking. You find a group of people that are going to be supportive and interested, and that you also have to be supportive of and interested in. But in making a network plan, you need to first familiarize yourself with all the formal and informal networks that are out there. You need to decide how these networks that exist are going to fit into your career development plan. To be part of an effective network, you need to, for your network to be effective, let me rephrase that, you will need to be both involved with formal, that's like professional organizations and things of that nature, and informal, which this is when you're with your peers, it's a more informal thing because you're not, even though you're here to do work together, you're also kind of sharing in what you're dealing with, but also just belonging to things like service clubs, and which I don't even know exist anymore, but things of that, belonging to organizations that may be either professionally oriented or community oriented, is also a form of an informal network. Informal networks can also be friends from a former job, people you volunteer with, people you met in a recreational pursuit that you have similar interests with. A good network contains a healthy mix of business and social conditions. Now, I guess there's many networking resources that are on the web. I'm in LinkedIn, but if any of you look me up, and I noticed right prior to this, usually if I have two people that have looked at my profile or whatever they call it in a week, I go, wow, I had 17 this last week. Hey. So I had a suspicion that people, are going, who is this guy and why does he want to talk to us? Unfortunately, looking at my LinkedIn site, you probably got no insights whatsoever because I just kind of I don't even know if I put my picture on it, but I just did it because somebody told me I should. Okay, college career centers, unemployment offices, professional career counselors can also help in creating networks for you. Now here's one where we go back to the coaching. Asking people in the careers that you want to pursue if they'll let you come in and do a informational interview with them about their jobs and about their and about how they got where they are. Most people, not all, most people will be very happy to do that as long as they can fit you into their schedule. And so what you need to be is obviously do it at their convenience, not at yours. And this is the way many people find mentors. You know, two people get together in an informative interview. They find that there's, it clicks. It's something that there's a positive rapport, and somebody's going to be much more willing to work with you if they find you, enjoyable and pleasant, and someone that they like to spend time with. Most important thing you can do is make contact. Make a list of the kinds of people you want in your network, and find those people. Make a list of potential contacts. Consider how you will contact people you would like to include in your network: in person, email, phone, LinkedIn, other online networking groups, social media, etc. Keep your network at a manageable size. I know people that pride themselves on having these huge networks, and I look at it and say, well, what good could that possibly be? There's no way in the world that they can stay in touch with these people. Because remember, your network are people you're going to stay in touch with. And so it has to be manageable. Okay, the last but possibly most important tool for good networking is to make sure you observe networking etiquette. And I can't emphasize that enough. Always respect your contacts' names. Get an okay before you use a person's name as a referral, or either for a job or just a referral to another person. Somebody says, hey, do you know somebody that knows about this? Yeah, I do. Let me check with them and see if they mind if I give you their name. Make sure you call people at times that are convenient for them. If you're on the West Coast, don't forget there's a 3-hour difference with the East Coast. So don't call somebody at the East Coast at midnight, even though it's 9 o'clock here. Don't wake someone up to just touch base. Follow through on your promises, really important. If someone asks for a copy of an article you've mentioned, jot that request on the back of her or his business card and send the article within a week. If you offer to give someone a phone number, make sure you send it. Thank everyone who helps you or provides you with leads. At any given meeting, you're bound to come away with at least 3 ideas or tips. It's wise to thank people for leads and ideas, even if their suggestion doesn't pan out. Your contacts will appreciate the follow-up. I think hopefully you all know that just from living your lives, but that's so important. Okay, slide 16. Why are we're already on this?
Oh, I thought it was more in depth. I don't know.
Maybe it is. Keep your plan dynamic. We'll get through this pretty quickly, folks. Your career plan is not set in stone. We talked about that. Make sure you develop ways to I know what. Develop ways to evaluate your progress. No means of evaluating your success. You should also focus on participation in community, maintaining contacts, and achieving certain awards and honors. Actually, what I was going to say before I went into this, and that's why it kind of threw me, is I'm just going back over what I think are the two most important, the two concepts that are essential in achieving your career plans. One is keeping your plan dynamic, and evaluating your efforts. Let's go to the next one. Once you've established a series of goals, figure out how to measure your career progress, know the means of evaluating your success. You should also focus on participation in the community, maintaining contacts, and achieving certain awards and honors and publications. And that's pretty much it for this session. This was chapter 1 of how to plan for your career. Now, one thing that I need to say to all of you, because I saw that this when I was a regional coordinator and was actually working closely with the fellows, is that everybody at this point in time, you know the year is about half done. You're starting to think, okay, what's next? And you're going to start getting really anxious to get on to that next step. But I really need to caution you, there's a lot left to do in this year, and lots of things that you still need to accomplish in this program. And so you need to make that your focus. But we want to be here and work with you so that when the year does come to an end, you're prepared to make that next jump to wherever it is that you want to go. So you've got a balancing act from this time forward. That you've got the commitment you made to CivicSpark and the organizations in which you're assigned, and you've got to start thinking about your career. And as I said, unlike most organizations, we don't just care about what's happening in your assignments. We do care about what comes for you next, but we need to make sure that it's balanced. Now, the next time that you will see me live and in person, and for those of you that have seen me live and in person, is at the mid-year gathering in February, which is a month away.
Yeah.
And there we will be doing one breakout session where we'll do a real quick introduction into career development, and then we'll break you into interactive groups so you can talk with one another about what you've done. And I will also be available through almost that entire time to set up one-on-one appointments with you. That if you want to talk to me one-on-one to kind of tell me where you are and what kinds of issues you've encountered, and get my help or at least lend an ear to what your situation is, I will be happy to do that. Those are the only two things I have to do at mid-year gathering. So hopefully some of you will actually sign up. Otherwise, I'll just be sitting around and watching what's going on.
We'll put you to work.
Any rate, questions?
I was just wondering, for signups for the one-on-one sessions, will that happen at mid-year gathering?
Yeah. But anybody who wants to contact me prior to it, I don't have cards. I haven't had cards printed in the last couple of years, and I couldn't even find my old cards when I went to look for them. But obviously, I'm in the email, whatever. So you should be able to easily find my email. Send me an email, and we'll set up a phone call. But yes, the signups will probably take place the first day of when you're registering for the mid-year gathering. As you come in that first day, there will be a sign-up sheet with time set aside, a certain location. So, any other questions?
Do folks online have questions? I can ask them if you type them into the chat box. Or, y'all.
Oh,
Aaron.
yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess just going back to informational interviews. After the interview happens and it's like a thank you email and you've established contact, what would you recommend as a way to, I guess, continue that contact?
Well, in the informational interview, probably one of the things that you're going to want to discuss is whether or not this person is interested in you being able to contact them in the future if you have any further questions. Once again, most people will say, yeah, that's fine, send me an email or whatever. Obviously, when you leave, you might move down that path as well, saying, gee, I really enjoyed this, I really appreciate your time. If I have further questions, I certainly hope that you'll be open to me posing them to you in the future. Most people are going to be fine with that. Most people want to help somebody move forward in a career. There are going to be some people who are very self-important and they're not going to want to bother. But I think the vast number of people that you seek out will be very helpful. Yes.
Just on that, I've been told that if you want to conduct an informational interview, you can try and use resources or platforms to actually like present the interview, like wherever you're an alumni base, if there's like an office that they have a blog, or like if CivicSpark would be willing to like, post your blog post on like, oh, I interviewed this person in this sector and here's what I got from it, like, and then you can send that to them and be like, here's the write-up, like we sent it to them before and like interact with them, and then it gets some, you've like done them a favor almost in a way, and like they've done you a favor, and so it's a way to interact. It's like one framework of going about it.
Sounds excellent. A tool that was not available to me in my career, but that sounds excellent. Anyone else? Everybody's ready to just hit the ground running and go home and find your book, dust it off, and find a template in there. Actually, I think it's the plan for your regional coordinators to probably the next time you gather start talking about the first few chapters. There's 7 chapters, and I have done a study guide for the regional coordinators for 6 of the chapters to help you, work through this book so that to focus on those things that are most important within the book. And the 7th chapter I'm going to do a rather extensive review of because it's probably the most important chapter, and that's evaluating your experience and cultivating a professional image. And we're going to possibly do another webinar depending upon whether we got good ratings today. Any rate, any other questions? Oh, that's all right. Would you like to share what made you chuckle?
Oh, no, I was just saying, just networking.
You're networking. Okay, well, see, right? We have an example of networking right here. Thank you for sharing that. We've already started off. Anything else?
No.
Well, thank you all.
Thank
Any questions coming in?
None, I don't think popped up. Oh, wait. Yes, wait. Some did. We're not done. I just didn't see it. I'm really.
That's good. I'll get a second.
Okay. I gotta figure out how to. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, cool. Got some good questions. Okay, this one says, the nonprofit industry can be difficult to enter due to limited funding unless one has a highly developed resume or skill set. What do you suggest of us for trying to enter the industry without going into debt from graduate school?
Entering into the nonprofit without going into debt. I mean, well, this would assume from this question that graduate school isn't a necessity for the job, because some jobs require graduate work. So I'm assuming that the question is asked, how do I get into the field without having to go to graduate school? Can they clarify that? Well, one thing that I will say, with nonprofits.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So how do you get into the nonprofit world without having to go to grad school?
Once again, assuming that the job doesn't require that, I would go back to what I said before about volunteering, about doing taking certificate programs, which are far less expensive than obviously a full graduate program. Most people who volunteer in a field that they want to pursue, and I don't have an actual data number on this. This is just based upon my observations. That most people get hired. If you volunteer somewhere and do a really great job, usually they'll find the funding, or if something opens up, you're going to be first on their list because they already know you. They know that you do good work. They know if you work that hard as a volunteer, then once they start paying you, hopefully you're going to work that hard or harder. So getting in the nonprofit is tough. And I ran a nonprofit organization for a year and a half. And fortunately, we were a very well-funded nonprofit because of what we were doing. But most of the people I hired were people I knew from my own networking. I tried to bring in people that I knew that could do the job that was necessary. So that gets back to networking. Get involved with organizations that this nonprofit works with, or the professional organizations surrounding it.
How long would you suggest is a valuable or respectable amount of time to be with any one organization?
Well, the professional standard is that, and this may be gone, but when I was coming up through, is you take a job, you stay there 2 years, regardless. You know, you wait 2 years before you move on. Now, there are exceptions to that. Nobody's going to blackball you because you only stay somewhere a year. I jumped around early in my career. But the standard is if you want a resume that looks like you're a stable employee and somebody who stays around long enough to contribute, you stay 2 years. Now, that's for jobs leading up to the top management. When you're in top management, the commitment, you're expected to stay longer. And there isn't, I've never heard a specific number, but I would guess that it's like 3 to 5 years to really have a resume that looks like it's, that you're that stable, reliable person that they want to hire.
How often is it appropriate to reach out to networking contacts you never see in person? I don't know if it's that you've never met them or you just never.
How would you have networked with them?
Maybe you've met them, but you were at a conference and you never see them.
Oh, some of you met it. Oh, no, okay, because that happens. In economic development, that happened to me all the time. I reached out as often as I would get a positive response. If somebody didn't take my call or return my email, then I knew that they weren't interested in continuing. But if they responded, I don't think there's any degree of a number of times you can contact or a number of times you don't want to be a pest, obviously, but you want to be. But if you have some valid reason for contacting them, I don't see any problem with doing it as often as there's a valid reason to do it. They'll let you know if it's not appropriate.
And then the last one was just, I think this might have come in before, but how they can sign up for one-on-one sessions. But just to reiterate.
One again, we haven't worked that out totally, but the way I will plan to do it is I will plan to have a list at the counter when you check in, and Rachel or Ariana will probably be there, and there'll be other things I'm sure that you sign up for, and this will just be one of them.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right, very good. Thank you. And if anybody has any other questions, I'll be here for a little bit. So if you want to talk one-on-one, you're shy, you don't like to talk in front of everyone, I'll be here for a few minutes.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been recorded, and I'll share out the slides as well. So thank you. I don't know how to do this. Just keep looking at me. Okay, here we go.
If any of them are still there.
Yeah, they probably.
Definitely just stare.
Yeah. Well, the webcam is gone. I don't know how to stop it without damaging the recording.
To listen to the
Do I just?
Stop recording.
I don't want to. Well,
We should unplug that one.
maybe I just
Thank you.
like end it.
What happened if you did lean all the way over the table?
And
It's cool.